It's one of those days here today in the mountains where the weather seems to change by the hour. The mountains seem to have their own weather system. So we'll see what we get while we're recording this. I want to talk about emptiness and the dance of emptiness and form, and the trap of getting caught in emptiness, which I've found to be, it seems really common in, the non-duality camp. There's actually two camps. There's the everything camp and the nothing camp, and people tend to camp out in one of two of those. And I've noticed that people who, this is a big generalization, but the everything camp seems to be more for those who ascribe to love and light spirituality, and we're all one, and everything is one, everything is source. I want to connect with source. And I want to be clear that neither of these is bad. And then the other camp is the emptiness camp of there is no doer, there's nothing to do, there's no one here. But both of those can become another identity, and they often do. They often become another way to avoid the simplicity of whatever is happening right now in your life, whatever is happening. Because non-duality is neither of those. I mean, it's neither and both. But if there's an attachment to either of those, if there's an identification with either of those, that's not it. Further. Oh my gosh, it's like tiny little, is that bugs, raindrops, droplets, something falling from the sky. So the way that I found that this goes is that neither emptiness nor the everythingness, so the formless and the form, can't be grasped to. Both of those have to be released. There can't be identification with either of those. If what you really want is the truth, if what you really want is to stand in truth, and for your awakening to be real and authentic and embodied, and for that to be the place that's lived from, there is a phase of emptiness. But that can become just another belief system. I did that for quite a while. I conceptually understood emptiness, and then I had to admit to myself and to another person that I don't actually know what it means to be empty. I don't know what it feels like to be emptiness. I had to admit that very humbly out loud. Because the process of this, you can't bypass the emptiness and jump straight to the everythingness. Because we start in the everythingness, that's what we're born into. We're born into the realm of form. We identify with form. So if you jump straight to trying to be everything and believing that everything is one, that's being very highly identified with the realm of form. So Nisargadatta Maharaj, I'm pretty sure it's him who says, wisdom is knowing I am nothing. Love is knowing I am everything. And in between the two, my life moves. And that's perfect. So the first part of the awakening journey, like when it really begins, is coming to know yourself as emptiness, is really accessing at a deep, deep level emptiness. It's not understanding it conceptually, though there could be a conceptual understanding prior to that. It's, digging down underneath all the concepts and the opinions and the beliefs and the ways of identifying and the ways of being in the world, and really like taking honest and sincere investigation of what is underneath that, of what you truly are. Because those identities come and go. They're always in flux. They're impermanent. So it's an investigation of the silent presence that lies underneath that. And you can hear that. You could hear the words that I'm saying and take that on as a concept that you believe. Like you can take on the concept and the belief that I am silence, I am presence, I am emptiness. And you can take that on as a belief and not have really realized that, which I did for quite a while. So that emptiness has to be accessed. The emptiness is accessing, is the transcendence. It's what lies beyond all the ways that we identify with form, with being human, with being an individual person, with being, a daughter, a sister, a partner, a co-worker, a boss, a kind person, a helpful person, a rebel, a traumatized person. It's letting go of all of that. It's releasing all of that. It's seeing that in actuality, that's not what I am. Those are comings and goings. But that emptiness is essential, like accessing, like really deeply accessing that emptiness is essential. So I can understand why there are so many teachers that really put such a big focus on the emptiness, because that, without accessing that, the embodiment can't happen. The embodiment and the everythingness only comes on the heels of knowing oneself as emptiness. Like really not knowing oneself as emptiness here, not understanding one's emptiness, not believing one's emptiness, but actually like grokking it. It drops like down into the belly, down into the system. And there's at least the way that I experienced was I would try to check in internally, and there was just, the only thing that was met was emptiness. It was empty every time I tried to do that. And it was very disorienting for quite some time. Like I would try to check in internally, and it was just over and over, it was just empty. There was nothing there. And that has been a big adjustment. That took me probably, I don't know, I would say like a year and a half to really fully adjust to that. And that, becomes the norm, is that emptiness. And it can be alluring to kind of camp out in that emptiness. And it can feel like, oh, that's it. That's it. But there might be an impulse in you to go further. And that's a very wise impulse. So, when I first accessed that emptiness, I was like, oh, this is it. Initially. And then there was something wiser that was like, no, keep going. Keep going. There's more here. That's in that Nisargadatta quote, wisdom is knowing I am nothing. It's knowing it. And that knowing is not an intellectualization. It's not a concept. It's not something that the mind can grasp. The mind cannot grasp that. It's beyond, a knowing that is beyond the mind. It's more in line with like gnosis. like the way that one knows gravity without ever having heard a concept of gravity. The way that one knows that you exist without ever really accessing that. There might be a train coming. Oh, there is. Okay. I'm gonna go inside real quick so it's not quite so loud. Okay, and then I will continue. I will continue after that. Let me adjust this. Let's come this way. Give me just a moment. Almost done. Okay. Okay, one moment. I'll be right back. Okay. Okay, so I was talking about emptiness. So the emptiness piece is only part of this. You can't access the everything piece without first accessing the emptiness piece. And we all want to bypass the emptiness piece. Like nobody wants to see their own emptiness. Nobody wants to come into contact with that emptiness and really confront that head on. I didn't want to do that. It wasn't a choice that I made. It was something that just happened one day. And it was pretty devastating. So that Nisargadatta Maharaj quote, wisdom is knowing I am nothing. Love is knowing I am everything. And in between the two, my life moves. So it can be tempting to either really camp out in the everything part of it and convince ourselves and have a conceptual understanding that I am everything, that everything is oneness, that we're all connected, we're all one. That's a very sexy idea, that it's all love. And you can believe that, but that, in order for that to be like grokked at a body level, at a fundamental like being level, you have to access the emptiness. Like you have to access the emptiness part. And so it can be very alluring to camp out in one or both of those, thinking that you have arrived somewhere. So it can be alluring once maybe you've just had a moment of accessing the emptiness. Or maybe you've just heard so much about the emptiness. So this was a trap that I fell into, is there was such deep suffering and I was really running from confronting the discomfort. Like there were so many ways that I was distracting myself. I was distracting myself with just being busy, with technology, with social media, with food, with substances, with There's so many ways that we do that with YouTube. And there's this thing that happens where there's really the crux of this is confronting the reality of the emptiness. So the sensation, there's sensations that are kind of swirling around that empty black hole that is actually the center of your being. And they act as barriers. And we feel that discomfort, we feel those sensations, and we run from them in whatever ways that we can, using whatever coping mechanisms are available to us. It's very common. I did a lot of that. And so maybe you've had a moment, either a moment of accessing that emptiness, or perhaps you've just heard so much about the emptiness, and the emptiness is very sexy because that can be taken on as another belief and a way to avoid actually truly accessing the emptiness. It's by taking on a belief that I am nothing, that there's nobody here, that there's no doer, that there's no self. That becomes another belief system, another way of identifying. It becomes another mask that we put on. Non-duality becomes another mask. But it's something, that emptiness is something much deeper. What Nisargadatta Maharaj is talking about in that quote is something fundamental. It's the fundamental essence of what you are. And it's lying underneath everything that you're running from. You have to go through everything that you're running from. Those coping mechanisms may naturally just get totally stripped away. That's what happened for me. The coping mechanisms all got stripped away. I found myself in a place totally alone, with no job and no community. Everything was unsatisfying. I would find myself swiping through my phone, watching YouTube videos, distracting myself, and just nothing was satisfying. There was just this ache, this yearning that just was unsatisfied with everything. And so there was just a natural putting everything down. Every way that I was still distracting myself, it was just everything, nothing felt right. Everything was ill-fitting. And so what ended up happening was just a lot of just silent sitting and just accessing those sensations that all of those coping mechanisms were distracting me from. And it was only by going through that discomfort, through those sensations, that I actually accessed in a real way that empty center. What you are in truth is a black hole. And the ego is doing everything it can, looking everywhere to try to fill it with identities, with sense pleasures, with distractions, with new identities, with material possessions, with money, with success, with status, with sex, with technology, with dopamine. We do everything we can to fill that hole, thinking that something external is finally going to fill it. But this accessing of emptiness is actually the realization that emptiness is what you are. It is the truth of what you are. And it cannot be filled because it is what you are in truth. And it is accessing that. It is coming into direct contact with that emptiness. And in doing so, there is a release of identification with all the distractions, with thinking that the external world or anything about who I think I am, anything about my thoughts, has any basis in reality, has any truth to it. So we have to access that emptiness, and only through accessing that emptiness can that expansion into the part of that quote, the Nisargadatta quote, love is knowing I am everything. So that emptiness has to happen first. We can't bypass that emptiness and jump to the everythingness. Because then there would still be an identification with the everythingness. And that hinders love. Real love can't happen if there's a clinging to the realm of form, to anything in the realm of form. If there's a clinging to being a certain way, or to showing up a certain way, or to being perceived a certain way, if we're clinging to an idea of who we think we are, that everythingness, that love cannot be accessed. It's only by going through that emptiness and directly contacting the emptiness that it can then expand into the everythingness. And, you know, that's where the form is emptiness and emptiness is form. That's what that's talking about. It's only by letting go fully of form and coming to know oneself as emptiness. The truth of what you are is empty, empty silent presence. It's only through that you can then come to know form as emptiness. And then there's no longer the attachment to form. There's no longer an attachment to the comings and goings, or a pushing and pulling at the comings and goings, or a belief that something needs to be different. And there's no longer a grasping at an outcome, that life needs to turn out a certain way in order for me to be happy or be okay. Wisdom is knowing I am nothing. Love is knowing I am everything. And in between the two, my life moves. You can think about that. So the emptiness and the everythingness is the formless and form. And you can think of those as like the banks of a river. And the living is the water. The water can't cling to the banks. You can't grasp at the banks of the river. It moves freely between the banks. So if you're trying to camp out, or even unconsciously, this happens very unconsciously, if you're trying to camp out in emptiness, either as a way to bypass the, discomfort or the wounds that you have, or the beliefs that you're holding, or the karma that has been lived out that wants to be felt and seen and liberated, then you're still living in the world of duality. You're still in the dream. You're still sleeping. You're still living in division, in separation. And then if you're camped out in the everythingness, same thing. It's a dance between the two. You can't hold either. It's I think Adyashanti talked about this. His teacher said it's not so much like this, like you're doing this, it's more like this. You can't cling to emptiness or to form. You can, but if what you want in truth is freedom, real freedom is, to know the truth of what you are, is to embody the truth of what you are. You can't hold either. It transcends both and includes both simultaneously. So the embodiment is letting go of identification with emptiness, especially if you have already accessed that emptiness. If you haven't, firstly, it requires a deep honesty with yourself. If you have not directly accessed or contacted that emptiness, it's having the self-honesty, it's having the willingness to admit that to yourself, that I don't actually know what it means to be empty. I don't know what it feels like to be empty, to be emptiness. I don't know. First, it requires an honesty with yourself in that way. And then maybe there will be the possibility to actually contact that emptiness. And so there's that. And then you come to, slowly, this is where I find myself, but slowly come to know form as emptiness through experiencing life, through having different experiences. It's, going through life and maybe having a moment of getting caught up in something and just suddenly realizing what's happening, like, oh, it's this too. This too is empty. This too is included, and it's an embrace. It becomes an embrace of all form, exactly as it is. Every facet of reality, every facet of the formless as it's manifesting as form. And form is constantly changing, so in that way, the absolute truth is that formless, unchanging presence, and then that manifests as form, and that's constantly changing. So you can't hold that. You can't hold either. It can't be held onto. The truth requires such a deep letting go. It's every second is dying as it is birthed. Death, 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 birth, 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 death, birth, death, birth, death. So there has to be a willingness to crack open. And all of life has to become included. There's, this process of becoming totally willing to be a full yes to everything in life, to life just as it's presenting itself, life exactly the way that it is right now. No past, no future, just what's here. And that's why maybe you've heard other people say, like, it's just this. If you want to know what enlightenment is, look around you. It's just what's happening now. Prior to the mind trying to put it into a box and label it and conceptualize it, prior to the words that are being spoken from this mouth. But it also includes that. It can't be otherwise. So it's this process of becoming more and more honest, and for the system, the capacity of the system to include everything. So there's an emptying, a complete emptying, and only when the cup is completely empty can it then be filled. So don't get stuck in emptiness. If what you want is the truth, and if you want to live the truth that you've realized, there has to be a willingness to let go of emptiness. To let go of your belief that there's nobody here, that there's no doer. At some point that won't even occur to you. That thought won't even arise. How could it? It's like an open hand, the everythingness. So the emptiness is the opening of the hand and releasing whatever's in the hand and sand falling through your fingers. And then the everythingness is the hand remaining open and not grasping or pushing anything. Just whatever shows up is it. Whatever shows up in your life right now, the simplicity of that, that's what awakening is. That's enlightenment. That's what you've been searching for. It's right in front of your face. It's right here. Always has been. But there is a process undertaken of coming to realize that, of coming to live it. I think that's all I have to say. I'll end with that quote. I love that quote by Nisargadatta Maharaj. I'm pretty sure that's who it's attributed to. Hopefully I'm not getting that wrong. But wisdom is knowing I am nothing. Love is knowing I am everything. And in between the two, my life moves.